Joining me now, Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee. So good to have you with us today.
Good to be with you.
You were critical of that summit. In fact, you called the resulting agreement anemic. Could Secretary Pompeo, though, in this next visit, could he shift the balance back to give the U.S. a little bit more leverage at this point, especially when we're talking about these satellite images that we've all seen?
Well, I certainly hope he can, because the summit produced a document that is anemic of all the agreements that have ever been entered into with North Korea, and basically was a document that said we promise to make promises in the future. It didn't even define denuclearization, which is for us the verifiable elimination and dismantling of all nuclear weapons and the infrastructure to create them, as well as the missile technology. So when you see North Korea actually improving its overall abilities, both on its missile development site as well as on its reactors, you have to question, why does someone do that if they fully intend to denuclearize? So I hope he can actually get both a clear definition that is agreed to as to what denuclearization for us is, as well as for the North Koreans, and secondly, a plan forward.
White House National Security Advisor John Bolton has said, listen, let's not have a rush to judgment here. There are steps in this process. It doesn't happen in one meeting. It doesn't happen overnight. But that he is confident that once there is an agreement, that within a year they'd be able to dismantle the overwhelming bulk of what North Korea has there in terms of nuclear. Do you agree with that time frame?
Well, listen, that's aspirational. The reality is getting an agreement with North Korea has never been difficult. We've had three presidents, Clinton, Bush, and Obama, all who achieved a degree of some agreement with North Korea. North Korea never follows through. So, you know, this is a question where you must verify before you even trust, because at the end of the day, North Korea goes back on its word. And its actions even now belie what the intentions of were the summit. What Kim Jong-un ultimately received was a great benefit. He went from international pariah to being looked like a statesman. He actually, we ended our military exercises with South Korea and didn't tell our allies, South Korea and Japan, which is unsettling to them. And thirdly, China's already advocating at the UN to end sanctions against North Korea, which is the only reason they're having conversations with us. So that's why I've introduced legislation, bipartisan legislation, to have oversight over this process from the Senate, because we think it's critically important in terms of national security.
You believe that you have the support for that bipartisan legislation?
Well, Senator Gardner, a Republican, has joined with me, and I think those who had the same view about the Iran agreement should have the same view about any nuclear agreement with North Korea.
I want to get your take on a couple of the topics. Actually, a fairly busy news week on a holiday week here. Of course, there is the looming nominee, the president's pick, who he will nominate to the Supreme Court. Obviously, this is a tough road for Democrats. There is not a lot that you can do. I don't think is a single person on that list who gets Democrats very excited, understandably. What's your plan here?
Well, first of all, we need someone who is actually going to follow the rule of law, not the rule of Trump. The president has made it very clear that he will only appoint judges from this list of 25, the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, both who are extremely opposed to the question of reproductive rights for women, who have an enormous antipathy to the Affordable Care Act. The president has said he's going to appoint pro-life judges, and that it will go back to the states. That would undermine a fundamental protection for reproductive health for women, and at the same time, for 130 million Americans who have pre-existing conditions, the end of protection against discrimination on that. So we're going to do everything possible. They changed the rules on the filibuster.
What is
they only need a
everything
simple
possible, though?
majority.
Because we knew all of those things going in, right? To your point, we've had this list for a long, long time since the campaign. So, I mean, are you talking about shutting down the government? What can you realistically do here? Well,
first of all, we're going to get the American people, hopefully, to be engaged in rising up and speaking up and saying, you know, we want our voices heard on a judge who will make a decision for the court, probably change the balance for over a generation on critical issues like health care, on reproductive rights, on voting rights, on civil rights. And we have seen judges who said, oh, no, we're going to uphold the rule of law and observe precedent until they get on the court, and then they change precedent.
We are hearing more and more people speak up when it comes to immigration. We've seen that. We've seen rallies at the border, obviously rallies over the weekend. There have also been chants of abolish ICE, which some of your fellow Democrats have picked up that chant. Is that helpful or is it harmful to you?
Well, what's harmful is the president's policy that is both, I think, as the courts have dictated, illegal and immoral. The America I know doesn't tear children apart from their mothers. The America that I know doesn't detain children in cages. The America I know doesn't talk about indefinite detention of families even who are asylum seekers to our country. And so this administration's got to follow what the judge said. In 2 weeks from when the judge ruled, those 5 years and under have to be returned to their family, and in 30 days, those 5 years and older. And it seems that the administration does not have a handle on this and how to do it, and that's alarming to us.
Well, that first deadline is a week out. I do want to get your take on this before we let you go. I have to ask you about this prank call that happened from this comedian, Bob Menendez. We have that sound. I want to play a little bit of it.
Well, I haven't looked. I mean, I have a list of people. I have a big list of people, Bob, and we'll take a look at it, and we're going to make a decision. I'll probably make it over the next couple of weeks.
Because I promise you, you will have my vote. I won't help you if you don't go too conservative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, we will talk to you about it.
We will talk to you about it. I know you put out a statement on that. Realistically, there's the funny comedian part of it, and then there's also this very real and troubling security breach that happened. How concerning is that to you?
Well, it's concerning to me that the most powerful man in the world, the President of the United States, could have a shock jock comedian get through to him and speak to him. I mean, on Air Force One. The reality is while it may have been a joke to him, the subject matter that he was talking about is very serious, the dividing of children from their parents, a Supreme Court nominee who will make a generational difference in the court against the interests of affordable health care, against the interests of reproductive rights, and then lastly, the security breach that would allow someone like him to get to the President of the United States. And so I worry that someone else, for different purposes, might be through. I hope that they dramatically change their protocol as to who gets to the president.
He thought he was speaking to you on that phone call, said, hey, we'll talk about it. Do you think this president is open to speaking with you about the Supreme Court picks?
Listen, I'd be happy to tell him that you cannot have a judge who is going to overturn Roe v. Wade, who is going to overturn voting rights, who ultimately is going to kill the opportunity for protections against pre-existing condition discrimination, and